In a year of such severe drought that even drinking water was a problem, my family discovered an underground river. Not only did it have an inexhaustible supply of fresh water, but also more fish than we could ever eat. Others could only tighten their belts to get by, but my family ate meat every meal until we were sick of it. In my past life, I couldn't bear to see the whole village suffer, so I told the villagers about the underground river. Who would have thought that everything in our house would be looted by everyone, even our home itself? It was the village secretary who couldn't stand it and let my family live in the cowshed. But after the drought came a blizzard. In the end, my family passed away one by one in the cold. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the year 75, before we discovered the underground river. I had just come to my senses, when I saw Zhou Yuansheng by the well, raising an iron shovel. His brutish, fleshy face was turned toward my dad, Luo Wenshan. The yellow earth on the ground was cracked with large fissures. The sun was so hot it made you dizzy, and the air was thick with the smell of dry earth. My dad was arguing with Zhou Yuansheng by the well. Zhou Yuansheng accused my dad of taking an extra pull full of water, claiming he was taking advantage of public resources, and was raising his shovel at him. My heart skipped a beat. In my previous life, this is where my dad got into a fight with Zhou Yuansheng, and was beaten to death. Dad, look out. I rushed forward to block him in front of my dad. With a cry of pain, Zhou Yuansheng's shovel handle slammed into the back of my head. The pain was so intense that everything went black. I went with emotion and fell to the ground, playing dead. Zhou Yuansheng was scared stiff. The iron shovel in his hand clattered to the ground. My dad, Luo Wenshan, was also stunned. Seeing me lying motionless on the ground, he abandoned his water buckets. And with bloodshot eyes, he yelled, "Zhengsheng, don't scare me." He didn't have time to fight Zhou Yuansheng. He just threw me on his back and ran home. Dad carried me on his back, jogging all the way. I could feel his back was drenched in sweat. I could also hear him secretly wiping away tears. But that actually made me feel relieved. In this life, Dad is still alive, and my two younger sisters haven't disappeared. There's still time to fix everything. When we got home, my dad had just put me on the bed. When I opened my eyes, my mom, Li Shufang, was wiping her tears, about to go out and find a doctor. When she saw I was awake, she was so startled she dropped the basin in her hands. I didn't have time to explain. I grabbed my dad's hand, pulled my mom into the inner room, and locked the door behind us. Mom, Dad, we'll deal with those Zhou family people later. Right now, I have something that can make our whole families fortunes turn, a treasure I want to show you. I lowered my voice, and pointed to the cellar. Dad, instead of running several miles every day, to fight for water in that dried up ditch, why don't we just dig our own well? I said to them in a low voice. My forehead was still wrapped in a blood-stained white cloth, which made me look quite scary. Luo Wenshan was squatting on the threshold, puffing on his dry pipe. When he heard this, he almost dropped his pipe on the ground. He just shook his head and said, "Zhengsheng, my boy, you must have been hit silly. The ground is so dry it's cracked 3 inches deep. All the old wells in the village have dried up. Where on earth are we going to dig and find water? To dig a well, you need to hire an expert, and you also have to buy bricks and stone. Our family can barely even afford a full meal. Where would we get the spare money?" I stomped my foot in frustration. I leaned in close to his ear and whispered, "Dad, do you trust me? A couple of days ago, behind the cellar, I found a patch of earth that was really damp. There must be a water source underneath. It looks like this drought is going to last for a long time. If we wait any longer, people in this village are going to starve. We can't just wait around to die." As I said this, my voice unconsciously rose a few notches. My mom, Li Shufang, heard the commotion, and rushed over from the kitchen, thinking my dad and I were arguing. But when she understood that I wanted to dig a well, she was actually the first to agree. Shufang chimed in, trying to persuade old Luo, "The boy is right. Water is life. If we can really find water, our family will be saved. That bunch of animals from the Zhou family won't let us fetch water. So we'll just have to dig for it ourselves." Luo Wenshan was a proud man to begin with. After hearing that, he fiercely stubbed out his cigarette. He gritted his teeth and agreed, but when he looked at the wound on my head, his eyes turned red again. He muttered, "That brat Zhou Yuansheng, he was too vicious. We can't just let this go." The moment the Zhou family was mentioned, that fire in my heart flared up again. In my past life, it was the Zhou family, relying on their numbers and power, who seized our house and caused my parents to freeze to death. Although those things haven't happened yet in this life, the seeds of hatred have already been sown. The Zhou family has many sons. If we were to fight them head on, my dad would surely lose. But that doesn't stop me from first collecting a little interest from them. For dinner, our family had some thin, watery pumpkin soup. I had my two little sisters go to bed early. Then, I pulled my mom and dad into the back room. We moved the heavy wooden bed in the corner, revealing the trapdoor to the root cellar where we usually kept sweet potatoes. "Dad, start digging down from here. I can tell the feng shui in this spot is good. There's definitely something significant here," I said, pointing to a corner of the cellar. Luo Wenshan didn't say a word. He just took off his jacket, grabbed a hoe, and got to work. He was a real powerhouse when it came to manual labor. His whole body was solid muscle, and in no time at all, he dug up a huge pile of dirt. Li Shufang wasn't idle either. She held an oil lamp by the mouth of the hole to light the way. Every now and then, she'd hand him a towel to wipe his sweat. As for the dirt he dug up, we carried it out in baskets, load by load, and piled it up against the backyard wall. Later, that soil could be used to fertilize the land, which would be perfect for growing some vegetables. And just like that, our family worked in secret under the bed for most of the night. We were so exhausted our bones ached before we finally took a break. Early the next morning, I left the house before dawn. Before I left, I reminded my dad, "When you go to work, find the village chief first and file a complaint. Just tell him Zhou Yuansheng nearly beat me to death. Don't worry about anything else. I'm heading to the township to handle something." Luo Wenshan was very worried, but he had no choice but to go work on the irrigation project. It was a mandatory assignment from the production team. Every household had to send a worker. When he arrived at the worksite, he first went to find the village chief, Zhou Xin. This Zhou Xin was Zhou Yuancheng's uncle. He was squatting on a rock drinking some water. After Zhou Xin heard what my dad had to say, he didn't even raise his eyelids. He said slowly, "Wanchen, this isn't entirely Yuancheng's fault. Your son took an extra load of water. That's taking advantage of the collective. Yuancheng was just upholding fairness. I'll have a word with him later." My dad was shaking with anger. The man was the village chief, so he could only swallow his anger and say, "That was for Grandpa Wang's household, the one on welfare. It wasn't for me." Zhou Xin waved his hand impatiently. All right, get back to work. Don't slow down our progress." I knew that old fox was just protecting his son, so I had to swallow my anger and go move stones. As for me, I went straight to Grandpa Wang's house on the east side of the village. Grandpa Wang is our village's only veteran. He lost a leg fighting the invaders back in the day. The government gives him a subsidy every month, so his word carries more weight in the village than even the village chiefs. The moment I walked in, I knelt before Grandpa Wang, pointed at the wound on my head, and cried, "Grandpa Wang, Zhou Yuancheng not only stole your water, but he also called you a cursed man with no heir. When I tried to deliver the water for you, he picked up a club as thick as a bowl and nearly beat me to death on the spot. Look at this wound." Grandpa Wang has a fiery temper. As soon as he heard this, he got so angry he slammed his cane on the ground, making it echo. That bastard, how dare he? I seized the opportunity and borrowed a wheelbarrow. I carried Grandpa Wang in it to 2 different places. Wang San is Grandpa Wang's distant nephew. When I saw him, I called out, "Company Commander Wang. It's terrible, Zhou Yuancheng is trying to kill me. He's committing sabotage, ruining the reputation of our commune." When Wang San saw the murderous look on Grandpa Wang's face, he was so scared he immediately declared, "Something like this actually happened? If it's true, I'll arrest him and send him to the township right away." Next, I took Grandpa Wang straight to the township government office. The township has special respect for veterans. When they heard a war hero had been wronged, they immediately sent 2 officials back with me to the village to investigate. When Zhou Xin saw the people from the township, he was completely stunned. All his bluster as the village chief vanished in an instant. He was bowing and scraping, leading the way. Zhou Yuancheng was still on the dam, swaggering around, when Militia Company Commander Wang San slammed him to the ground and slapped him twice across the face. "Luo, you set me up." Zhou Yuancheng screamed at the top of his lungs. He struggled like a wild donkey. I just sneered and ignored him. The official from the township had a stern face and a very firm tone. He ordered the militia to take him away, saying they would deal with him after a thorough investigation. In that moment, Zhou Yuancheng knew he was finished, defeated by me, the one he had always looked down on. Zhou Yuancheng's younger brother, Zhou Yuanjia, happened to arrive just then, seeing his brother being arrested. With fire in his eyes, he charged at me. "Luo Zheng, you just wait. I'm going to cripple you today." I stepped behind Grandpa Wang and said coldly, "What? You want to go to the township and keep your brother company? You two can be a pair of murderers together." Zhou Yuanjia's face turned livid with rage, but seeing so many people around, he didn't dare to make a move. He could only watch as I walked away. When I got home that night, I told my parents what happened. My dad, Luo Wanchen, was grinning from ear to ear. He kept praising me for being capable. To celebrate, my mom did something she'd never done before. She sprinkled a handful of precious rice into the pumpkin soup. The aroma filled the whole house. After dinner, I had my little sister, Luo Hongmei, stand watch outside. Then I took my parents and crawled back into the cellar under the bed. On the night of the 3rd day, my dad dug his shovel in and suddenly, there was a cracking sound. A piece of the earth floor beneath our feet collapsed, and a blast of cool air rushed out from there. The wind carried a long-lost hint of moisture that was incredibly refreshing to smell. "Dad, it's open. Quick, bring the torches," I whispered excitedly. My dad's hands were trembling. We lit 2 torches and climbed down the ladder. Beneath us was a huge natural cavern, and the ceiling was covered with all sorts of strange stalactites. They were sparkling. We had barely taken 2 steps when we heard the rushing sound of flowing water. After we went around a rock wall, sight before us left my whole family stunned. It was an underground river, 5 or 6 meters wide. The water was so clear you could see the pebbles at the bottom. Under the light of the torches, the surface of the river was teeming with splashing. "Dad, look at those catfish," I shouted, pointing to the shallows by the riverbank. "Those catfish are so dark and fat. The biggest one must weigh over 10 pounds. They were crowded by the bank, fighting for nutrients in the mud." My dad, Luo Wanchen, dropped right to his knees by the river, cupped some water in his hands, and gulped it down. As he drank, tears streamed down his face. "It's fresh water. It's sweet. The heavens have blessed us. Our family is saved." Li Shufang was even more emotional, wiping away her tears. Staring at the countless fish, she kept murmuring, "Buddha bless us." I knew this wasn't just life-saving water, it was the most valuable resource in these times. The cavern was very spacious. We wandered around inside for most of the night. It was cool like an ice cellar, and the air was filled with the smell of moisture. It was a completely different world from the parched, dry land outside. It wasn't until the torches were about to go out that we reluctantly climbed back to the surface and closed the cellar lid properly. We then moved the wooden bed back to its original position. Mom and Dad sat under the kerosene lamp, panting with excitement. "We have to take this secret to our graves. We absolutely cannot let anyone outside know. If word gets out, our lives will be ruined." Luo Wanchen took a deep drag from his pipe and nodded. "I know, don't flaunt your wealth. This water is gold. Tomorrow, I'll raise the backyard wall and put broken glass on top to keep the Zhou family from climbing over," Li Shufang added. "Tomorrow, I'll find the Chinese cabbage seeds I saved from last year. With this water, we can grow green vegetables in our backyard. And we can raise a few chickens. Eggs are money, too." None of us in the family slept that night. The next day, when we went to work on the irrigation project, Mom and Dad's eyes were red. But they were full of energy. Even the way they looked at people had a newfound confidence. In the evening, I slipped away early and went home to find an old fishing net. When it got dark, my dad and I secretly slipped into the cavern. Surprisingly, there were a few cracks in the cavern that let in a little bit of faint light. We could vaguely make out the outline of the underground river. At a narrow part of the river, we built a weir with large stones, leaving just one opening to place the net. Then, my dad took a wooden stick and stirred the water vigorously, driving the fish towards the opening. The water immediately erupted into chaos. A dense school of fish kept slamming into the net. The force was so strong it almost pulled me into the water. Pull up the net, quick. My dad's voice was hoarse with excitement. When we pulled it up and took a look, the net was full of wriggling catfish, along with quite a few fat loaches. That biggest catfish probably weighed a good 15 or 16 pounds, slapping and thrashing on the ground, and all that from just one net. It had to be at least 50 jin. Luo Wenshan stared at the fish, his eyes nearly popping out of his head. This one catch is enough to feed our family for half a month. I had him dump the fish into a small, natural pool on the bank first. That pool was connected to the underground river, so the water was fresh. The fish wouldn't die. This way, we could keep collecting them. Before long, our family's little pool would have 1,000 jin of fish saved up. When my mom finished her farm work and snuck in, she saw the pool swarming with fish. She was completely stunned. Oh my goodness, it's like we've struck gold, since we didn't dare to start a fire and cook fish in the village. Fearing the aroma would drift out and bring us trouble, my mom actually snuck a small pot, bowls, and chopsticks down from our house. Using the fresh water from the underground river, she set up a stand right there in the grotto and simmered a pot of milky white catfish soup. No other seasonings were added, just a handful of coarse salt. But the aroma was so fresh and savory it could make you cry. In a year of drought when everyone was drinking muddy water, the three of us sat together in the underground grotto, drinking the piping hot, delicious fish soup. Eating that tender, fresh fish meat, it was so fragrant and delicious, it nearly brought tears to all our eyes. It's so good, just so good, my mom said as she ate. Later, I'll cook another pot for Hong Mei and the others. I'll let the smell die down a bit before I take it up. We absolutely can't let any outsiders catch a whiff of fish. I looked at the pitch-black river water, scheming about how to make the Zhou family pay back everything they owe us. In a bit, let's get these fish ready. Tonight, I'll take you somewhere good, I said, while rolling up the bedding in the room, revealing the heavy trapdoor underneath. Luo Wenshan was squatting by the bed, smoking his pipe. Hearing my words, his hand trembled. He didn't even notice the ash falling on his foot. Sheng, are we really going tonight? The patrols out there are on high alert. If we get caught, in a year of great drought, fish are gold. If we miss this window, the price will drop. I cut him off, my expression firm. First, I spread several thick layers of oilcloth at the cellar entrance to prevent the fish slime from dirtying the bedding. That bedding is our family's lifeline. If it got that earthy, fishy smell on it, Mom would nag us for half a year. Dad and I worked together, pulling over 200 jin of catfish from the underground river. These fish were huge. They thrashed for their lives inside the woven sacks, slamming against the ground with loud thuds. It took all our strength to haul the heavy sacks of fish up through the narrow cellar opening. Luo Wenshan tightened his belt and helped me load the fish onto the old, rickety wheelbarrow in the backyard. First, we lined the wheelbarrow with a thick layer of straw, then put the fish on top. Then we covered them with a pitch-black old cotton quilt, and finally, we placed a few bundles of firewood on top of that. From the outside, it just looked like a regular load of firewood. Let's go, Dad, we'll take the side roads. I pulled the rope in the front, while Dad pushed the handles from behind. The two of us snuck out of the village in the dark. In this severe drought, there wasn't even the chirp of an insect on the road. Only the creaking of the wheelbarrow's axle sounded exceptionally piercing in the night. Along the way, we dodged 2 patrols. It wasn't until 1 in the morning that we felt our way to the scrapyard warehouse on the city's outskirts. The place was remote, surrounded by rusted, rotten iron racks. A musty, rusty smell hung in the air. I took out half a folded, wrinkled old newspaper and tapped on a wooden door, 3 long knocks and 2 short ones. The door creaked open a crack, and a man in an old straw hat peeked his head out. He was Lao Wang. The big factory canteen in the city came to him for anything they lacked. Lao Wang took the half newspaper from my hand and matched it with his own. Only then did he breathe a sigh of relief and say in a low voice, "What took you so long? Where's the stuff?" I lifted the old cotton quilt off the wheelbarrow, revealing the almost divine-looking catfish inside. Lao Wang's eyes went wide. He reached out and grabbed one that weighed about 10 jin. The slippery fish thrashed in his hands. My goodness, in times like these, where did you get so many fat catfish? He marveled, while quickly ushering us deeper into the warehouse. In those years of planned economy, private trading was considered speculation and profiteering. Everyone had their faces covered, showing only their eyes. 5 mao per jin, the price is firm, I said, getting straight to the point. Hearing this, Luo Wenshan's heart pounded in his chest. At that time, pork was only 7 or 8 mao a jin. Selling fish for 5 mao was an astronomical price, but Lao Wang didn't even hesitate. Deal, I'm in urgent need of these fish, I'll take them all. In the end, it was about 200 jin of fish. Lao Wang handed me over 100 yuan, but besides the money, I also had my eye on the scarce goods in his warehouse. I want cotton cloth, 2 bolts of the thick kind, and a 50 jin bag of white flour, and give me a stack of industrial coupons. Lao Wang swiftly dragged the items out from behind a pile of old newspapers. These were all treasures he had scrounged from various sources. Dad stared at that snow-white flour, unable to look away, his hands shaking uncontrollably. After the trade, I stuffed the money into Dad's hands. He hastily sewed it into a hidden seam in his waistband, terrified the money would grow wings and fly away. On the way back, although the wheelbarrow was loaded with heavy goods, Dad's steps were much lighter than before. Just as the sky was faintly dawning, we finally made it home. Yi Shufang hadn't slept at all and was sitting on the doorstep, weeping. The moment she saw us, she rushed to bolt the door shut. "You're back. Did you run into any trouble?" Luo Wenshan's face was flushed with joy. He placed the white flour he was holding onto the table. "Wife, hurry and cook. Today, everyone in the family gets a boiled egg, and we'll make a big pot of rice porridge." For that entire day, our front door remained closed. My mom stuffed all the cracks in the door and windows with old rags, terrified the aroma would drift over to old lady Yang's house next door. A large pig's head we got from the black market was braising in the pot. The aroma of chili and star anise swirled around the tiny room. White rice was scooped into bowls, gleaming white and topped with rich, fatty pieces of the pork head. My two younger sisters, Luo Hongmei and Luo Hongyue, were drooling at the sight. "Quick, eat, don't make a sound," Li Shufang said as she gave them pieces of meat. She urged them in a hushed voice. They hadn't even had 2 bites yet, when we heard old lady Yang's shrill, grating yelling from next door. "Oh, the torture. Who in the world is cooking meat right now? That smell is absolutely deadly." Just then, there was a frantic knocking at the door. "Wen Shun's wife, are you home? I'm here to borrow some embers." It was old Mrs. Yang, testing us. That old woman was famous for her sharp eyes and keen sense of smell. She loved nothing more than sniffing out what goodies other families had. I shot my mom a look. Li Shufang quickly hid the bowl of meat inside the cabinet. She wiped the grease from her mouth and opened the door just a crack. "Oh, Mrs. Yang, we haven't even started a fire. We were just planning on having some pumpkin soup to make do." "So you wouldn't have any embers then?" Old Mrs. Yang craned her neck, peeking inside. She sniffed the air hard, but my mom had already gotten rid of most of the smell. "Funny, I think I smell meat," old Mrs. Yang said with a suspicious look on her face. "You must be dizzy from hunger. These days, we've nearly chewed through all the tree bark. Where would we possibly get meat?" After sending old Mrs. Yang on her way, our whole family exchanged a smile, but deep down, we were more on guard than ever. After eating, the 3 of us still had to go work for the production team. I hadn't slept a wink the night before, so I was definitely feeling sluggish when I went to the fields. The village's work point recorder was Zhou Lily. He was Zhou Shin's little sister, and she relied on her family name, Zhou, to walk around the village with her nose in the air. When work was over, I glanced at the record book and immediately flared up. "Zhou Lily, how come everyone else gets 10 points for the same work, but you only gave me 8? Zhou Lily shot me a sideways glance. "And what were you doing last night? You were listless all day. It was obvious you were slacking off. I was being generous giving you 8 points. If you don't like it, go ahead and report me to the township." A few of the burly laborers from the Zhou family started laughing and deliberately whistled at me. I didn't say a word, but I sneered to myself. This Zhou Lily had been unpopular in the village for a long time. She had docked points from plenty of people who weren't from her family. On the way home, Yang Shang is old Mrs. Yang's son. He's a teacher, but his wife Chen Shuhong is an educated woman. She used to be one of the educated youth. "Brother Yang, I've seen your wife's skill with numbers. She's 100 times better than Zhou Lily. This job of point recorder, it's supposed to go to whoever can read and write. Why should someone who didn't even finish primary school get to keep it?" Yang Shang paused for a moment, scratching his head. "But our family name is Yang. We can't win against the Zhous." "That's not necessarily true. Today, Zhou Lily didn't just dock my points, she also shorted your wife 2 points from the day before yesterday. As long as all the families with other surnames stick together, she won't be able to hold onto that position." Asterisk, whispering, asterisk, I lowered my voice and gave Yang Shang an idea. Told him to go home and plant the idea in his mother's head. Even though old Mrs. Yang is awful, when it comes to protecting her own family's interests, she's willing to fight to the death. Sure enough, the next day, old Mrs. Yang started a brawl with Zhou Lily at the brigade headquarters over the work points. Hair pulling, face slapping, it was a complete chaotic mess. Taking advantage of the chaos, I fanned the flames from the sidelines, getting all the other long-suffering villagers to finally turn on her. In the end, Zhou Shin had no choice. To calm everyone down, he had to temporarily suspend Zhou Lily from her post, saying they would hold a new selection. When night fell, I borrowed a donkey from Wang Jun, the militia platoon leader. Wang Jun is a righteous man. I gave him 5 jin of rice. Without a second thought, he handed me the donkey. "Be extra careful when you go out now. The Red Guards are causing a lot of trouble in the county town." "Don't worry, Brother Jun, I've got this." This time, Dad and I knew the route well. With the donkey cart, transporting the fish was much less work. We pulled another net from the hidden river. This time, we only picked the big ones, weighing over 300 jin in total. Just as we were approaching the black market, the sky suddenly turned gloomy. A cold wind was blowing. I had just set up the stall, when that girl in the red scarf appeared again. She was truly eye-catching. Her almond-shaped eyes sparkled in the dark, as if they could speak. "Boss, give me 2 of your biggest. My grandpa is sick, and he's craving some fresh soup." Her voice was clear and crisp, laced with a sense of urgency. I didn't waste any words. I picked out the 2 fattest catfish for her, weighing over 30 jin. "Here you go. These fish have a special vitality. Eating them is guaranteed to make him healthy." I joked. The girl looked at me, a hint of a smile in her eyes. "Thank you. My name is Lin Ruolin. If you have more fish this good, save them for me next time." I watched her follow a tall, thin man and disappear behind a pile of scrap. I felt a strange stirring in my heart. This entire batch of fish sold out. My money pouch was much heavier. Before leaving, in a quiet corner of the scrapyard, I saw an old woman guarding a bamboo basket and wiping her tears. The basket was full of fluffy little chicks, all chirping away. "Ma'am, how much are these chicks?" 30 cents each. "Son, I'm begging you, please buy a few. We've truly run out of food at home." I saw how pitiful she looked. The cracks on her hands were frighteningly deep. I simply waved my hand. "I'll take them all, 25 of them. Here's 7 yuan and 50 cents for you. You can keep the change." The old woman was so grateful she nearly knelt before me. On the way back to the city, the donkey cart was loaded with 200 jin of grain and 25 little chicks, along with a large pile of cotton cloth, oil, salt, soy sauce, and vinegar. As Luo Wenshin drove the donkey, he began to lecture me. "You're too soft-hearted, kid. In times like these, we can barely take care of ourselves, yet you buy so many chickens. Think of how much grain they'll eat later." I smiled and didn't argue back. Only I knew that even though this drought would last a while longer, a hidden underground river had plenty of water. The backyard would soon be able to grow vegetables. Then, the chickens will have insects to eat, and we will have meat to eat. Life will only get better and better. As we neared home, the eastern sky was already showing the first light of dawn. I looked at Georgia village, gradually coming into view in the distance, and silently said to myself, Mom, Dad, in this lifetime, our family will never be treated like beasts of burden again. As we got off the cart to unload our things, I deliberately tried to be quiet, but I still heard from the corner of the wall. Someone suddenly let out a cough. The sound was piercing in the dead of night. It gave Luo Wenshin a huge fright. He hurriedly protected the sacks on the cart, and looked around everywhere. Fortunately, the surroundings were quiet. No kerosene lamps were lit in any house, and there was no sign of a flashlight beam. Only then did we, father and son, breathe a sigh of relief and tiptoe into the courtyard. We moved all the goods into the house in one go and bolted the door securely behind us. When Li Shufang saw that Dad and I were back safe, she finally lit a dim little lamp. Her eyes immediately landed on the shiny enamel pot on the table. She absolutely adored it, reaching out to touch it again and again. She lowered her voice and said, "This pot is so beautiful. It's the perfect thing for storing lard. When those gossips from Jojia village see it, they'll be green with envy." I laid out the things I bought one by one and said, "Mom, these are liberation shoes, a pair for each of us. They'll protect our feet when we work in the fields. And this cotton cloth, you can make a couple of new outfits for my sisters later. Use what's left to sew a vest for Dad." Finally, I carefully lifted the fluffy little chicks out of the basket. They were still chirping away. "Mom, while it's still dark, put these chicks in the backyard co-op with the mother hen. See if the old hen will raise them." Li Shufang looked at the basket full of little creatures. Her eyes filled with a smile as she muttered, "These little things are wonderful. When they grow up, they'll lay eggs. Eggs can be traded for money. Our family finally has something to look forward to." In the eyes of a villager, as long as there were living things running around the house, you'd feel a sense of security, as if you could overcome any hardship. Dad and I got back early tonight, so Li Shufang went into the kitchen and boiled 2 plump, brown-shelled eggs for us. Before the other villagers were awake, she took me into the karst cave under the bed, where she chopped up the leaf lard I had bought. She set up a large wok, and in the flickering firelight, the pure white lard rendered out, filling the entire cave with a tempting aroma. Li Shufang also made a large plate of fried dough drops. Feeling bad about how hard her husband and child worked, she impulsively sprinkled a generous amount of precious brown sugar on top. "You too, eat up while it's hot. You haven't slept a wink all night, it must have been tough. You can't wear your body out." When the noodles were ready, there was a fried egg sitting in the bowl. Li Shufang added a big spoonful of the freshly rendered lard, and sprinkled some crisp green onions on top. Once the lard coated the hand-pulled noodles, every strand became smooth. The moment I took a bite, my mouth was filled with a rich fragrance that brought a deep sense of satisfaction. "Hurry and get some sleep. You have to go to work at dawn. Don't let anyone notice anything is off," Li Shufang reminded me. Then turned to tend to the chicks and the mother hen. In the morning, on my way to work at the canal dam, I ran into Yang Shang. From a distance, he handed me a crinkled, cheap cigarette. Yang Shang looked around to make sure no one was there, then leaned in close and whispered, "Zheng Sheng, yesterday, Zhou Xin came to see me and my wife. Thanks to your idea, it's a sure thing that Chen Shuhong will become the work point recorder." He kept thanking me as he spoke, his eyes full of gratitude. He said if it weren't for me, his family would never have been able to stand up to the Zhou family in their lifetime. I smiled and replied, "That's also because your wife is literate and educated. Once she becomes the work point recorder, your family's work points will never be unfairly docked by Zhou Lily again. Life will definitely get better and better for you." I was actually a bit tired right then. I hadn't slept at all last night. Thinking about how we still needed to build a mud brick wall around our yard, I knew my dad couldn't do it alone. So, I went to talk it over with a few guys in the village I was on good terms with. I told them to come over to my house after work tomorrow to help out, and I'd treat each of them to a filling dinner. When they heard there'd be meat and white rice, everyone's eyes lit up. They all thumped their chests and promised to be there on time tomorrow. Then, during the afternoon shift, just as I'd hoped, the scorekeeper was now Chen Shuhong, and my work points were smoothly recorded as a full 10 points. After work, I took the donkey out and fed it well, then I secretly brought a few large eggs back to Wang Jun. Wang Jun took the eggs and glanced around cautiously. He suddenly lowered his voice and said to me, "Zheng Sheng, you need to be careful. I heard that Zhou Xin is pulling some strings at the commune. Zhou Yuancheng will probably be let out in a few days." When I heard the news, my heart sank, but I didn't let any of it show on my face. When I got home, as soon as I told my parents, my father, Luo Wanshin, jumped to his feet in a rage. He started cursing. That animal Zhou Yuancheng beat him so badly. He smashed a brick to pieces on him, and they're just going to let him out? I'm going to go and settle this with him. Hearing that made my head spin. In my past life, my dad was killed after being set up by that gang, all because he went to demand justice from Zhou Yuancheng. I quickly pulled him back and said in a low voice, "Dad, if we go head to head with them, we'll be the ones who lose. The Zhou family is too well established in this village. We have to try a different approach." I leaned in close to his ear and carefully explained the intricate plan I had been thinking of for a long time. My parents were stunned as they listened. Later that night, around 9 o'clock, at the quietest time of night in the village, a terrible scream suddenly erupted from our little courtyard. It was followed by my mom's piercing screams, "Help! My son isn't breathing. Somebody, please help!" All at once, kerosene lamps started lighting up in the neighboring houses. Neighbors threw on their clothes and ran out to see what was going on. Old Mrs. Yang was the first one there. She was muttering, "Oh, what a terrible sin." The very next morning, old Mrs. Yang had already spread the news to the whole village, saying the Luo's boy was rolling on the floor in agony from a headache last night. He couldn't even talk. A weeping Li Shufang was desperately begging people for a vehicle to take me to the hospital. Finally, Lu Er, the cart driver, took pity on her and agreed to give us a ride. Later at work, Lu Er recounted the event, still shaken. Luo Zheng's face was as pale as a sheet. When Luo Wanshin and I were lifting him onto the tractor, he was totally limp, and with that, the whole village knew. They knew that the brick Zhou Yuancheng had hit me with had caused a serious injury that had finally caught up with me. The village elders shook their heads and sighed, saying, "The head isn't something you can just go around hitting." He was young and forced himself to keep working, but now that the underlying injury has flared up, it could be fatal. In reality, though, I was lying in a bed at the county public hospital, the pungent smell of disinfectant filling my nostrils. When my mom, Li Shufang, paid the tractor driver, her hands were trembling. Pained her to part with the money, but she had to keep up the act for me. She paid him while wiping away tears. The doctor saw me clutching my head and moaning in pain. When he was told I'd been struck hard by a brick days earlier, the doctor's expression turned serious. He immediately scheduled a series of tests. Doctors in those days were pretty trusting. Seeing how violently I was reacting, plus my dad standing there with a mournful face, talking about how poor our family was, and that we only came because the pain was unbearable, the doctor went right ahead and wrote on my chart: suspected severe concussion, possible intracranial damage pending investigation. Following my instructions, my dad took all the papers stamped with the big, red official seal. Zhang Bulao hid the diagnostic certificate and all the receipts inside his clothes. This is our family's protective charm. I was admitted to the hospital. In front of the doctor, my old man shouted loudly, "Doctor, you must use the very best medicine. Even if it means selling everything we own, we have to get our kid cured." For the 2 days I was in the hospital, it was all shots and medicine. The payment slips kept coming, one after the other. When my parents saw that the hospital room was empty, they would hurry to the township commune to cause a scene, especially near the detention center where Zhou Yuancheng was locked up. Li Shufang sat at the main gate of the commune, slapping her thighs and wailing, shouting that Zhou Yuancheng had killed someone. A murderer must pay with his life. She said I was in the county hospital undergoing emergency treatment. In just 2 days, we spent over 200 yuan. This amount left the commune staff completely stunned. 200 yuan in 1975. That was 10 years of savings for many families. It was an entire year's salary for a full-time worker. The commune had originally planned to release Zhou Yuancheng in a couple of days. But now, everything had changed. No one dared to bear the responsibility for murdering a productive force. And Zhou Xin was summoned to the township commune. His face was frighteningly grim. He looked at the receipts in the diagnosis report, each one stamped with the big, red official seal of the county hospital. He was speechless for a long while. The Zhou family discussed it for half the night. In the end, they decided to try a peaceful approach first. They had to settle this matter, even if it cost them dearly. They couldn't let Luo Jia actually take the matter to court. That night, with a grim face, Zhou Xin said to his elder brother, Zhou Cheng, "Brother, the commune secretary himself has said that if Luo Jia doesn't change his tune, Yuancheng will be sentenced. He might even be sent to a forestry farm for re-education through labor." Zhou Cheng, the group leader, valued his reputation above all else. Hearing that a family member might become a labor convict, he was so angry he slammed his pipe on the table, making a thunderous noise. If he's in prison, how can our Zhou village ever hold its head high in the commune again? What about the honor of our Zhou family ancestors? Zhou Cheng also knew very well. He had only started the fight to help Zhou Xin get water. This money couldn't come from just his branch of the family. The next day, with a grim face, Zhou Xin and Zhou Cheng came to my hospital room, carrying some pastries. I was closing my eyes, pretending to be unconscious, while Luo Wenxian stood guard in front of my bed, looking like he was ready to fight to the death. "Brother Luo, Yuancheng is just young and impulsive. Look how this has gotten out of hand. We're all fellow villagers." Zhou Xin forced a smile. I slowly opened my eyes. I pulled out a severe injury assessment from under my pillow, stamped with a big, red official seal. I looked at him coldly. "Secretary Zhou," the doctor said, "this injury might never heal for the rest of my life. I just want to ask, tempting to murder the successor of a war hero and destroying a productive force. How many years would someone get for that in our township?" I deliberately emphasized the words, war hero. This was a family connection I had just worked out with Grandpa Huang. Zhou Cheng's cheek twitched. He knew that once such a political stain was attached to them, the entire Zhou clan wouldn't be able to recover for a decade. He whipped his head around and roared at Zhou Xin, "Look at the fine offspring you've raised. Hurry up and apologize to the Luo family." In the end, under pressure from the clan elder, Zhou Cheng, Zhou Xin had no choice but to pull out a thick wad of great unity bills from inside his clothes. A full 400 yuan in compensation. Not only that, I also forced Zhou Xin, right on the spot, to guarantee that the Zhou family would never again give the Luo family trouble over work points or water access. Completely ignored his eyes, which were practically shooting fire, and stuffed the 400 yuan into my clothes. I stayed in the hospital for another 2 days, but they couldn't find anything wrong with me. So they urged me to check out. By then, the medical bills had already reached 300 yuan. It all came out of the 400 yuan the Zhou family paid us in compensation. When the Zhous heard that they had not only paid out the money, but that our family had also spent so much at a major hospital, Zhou Yuancheng's mom was so angry she fainted. In 1975, 400 yuan was an astronomical sum. That was the Zhou family's life savings. This time, I had basically cleaned them out. The Zhou family thought the Luo family was extorting them, but we had the receipts and the diagnosis report from a major hospital. To ordinary people, that was incredibly authoritative. Everyone thought our family was in the right. A person's life is at stake, after all. The Zhou family had to pay up. The matter was even brought before the commune secretary. Zhou Xin ran around trying to sort things out, but it was no use. He could only accept his bad luck. After I got home, I got a catfish weighing 3 or 4 jin and put it in a woven plastic sack. When I arrived at Wang Jun's house, he was stunned to see the catfish. In those days, a fish like this was incredibly valuable. I lied and said that the last time I went to the county town, I saw someone selling live catfish. They didn't require ration tickets and weren't expensive, so I bought a few to raise back home. I brought one over for him to try. Wang Jun knew how hard this fish was to come by. There was a major drought this year, and all the water had dried up. So where would any fish come from? But his family hadn't eaten fish in a long time, so he didn't make a big fuss and happily called Uncle Wang over to drink with them. At dinner, there was white rice on the table and a big pot of catfish stewed with tofu. Just looking at it made your mouth water. Wang Jun got the drinks going. He also asked about Zhou Yuancheng. He said that although Zhou Xin had paid the compensation, he was definitely still holding a grudge. All the officials in Zhoujia village were named Zhou. In the future, they would inevitably make trouble for me. But I didn't see it that way. This time, Zhou Yuancheng had to go to jail. No matter how vicious the Zhou family was, they wouldn't dare to murder or commit arson. I just had to be careful. Wang Jun said that for injuring someone and giving them a concussion, a sentence of a year or so wouldn't be a problem. He could even be locked up for 3 years. Hearing this, I looked around, then leaned in and whispered my plan into Wang Jun's ear, hoping he would help me. When I left, it was already dark. Wang Jun walked me out the door. He walked with me until I was out of sight. When he got back home, his heart was still pounding. He saw that his uncle was still there. Looking thoughtful, he couldn't help but wipe the sweat from his brow. He glanced nervously at his uncle. "Look at you, so spineless." He dared to say it, so why don't you dare to do it? I think his idea is excellent. You might as well give it a try. It's not like you have anything to lose, anyway. As soon as Uncle Wang said this, Wang Jun nodded repeatedly. Sometimes, when an opportunity presents itself, you really have to seize it. If this plan succeeded, he suddenly grew excited. I returned home to see my father angry. When I asked, I found out that Luo Wanshan had run into Zhou Yuancheng's older brother, Zhou Yuanjun, at the village entrance. The man had stopped him and hurled abuse, saying our family had extorted the Zhou's life savings. The two of them nearly came to blows. Luckily, there were many villagers around to pull them apart. Otherwise, Luo Wanshan might have been badly hurt. I put on a stern face and gave my father a scolding. That underground river beneath our house, our days of getting rich and living well are just around the corner. Your life is precious. Is it really worth tangling with that worthless lot? I told him that on this matter, he had to listen to me. I have my own plans. But after my mom, Li Shufeng, shot him a glare, all he could do was sulk. After all, I was the one who discovered this underground river. Their son has a plan. Listening to him is the right move. That night, Luo Wenshan kept muttering. He said the family had spent a lot of money this time, and maybe we should go sell some more fish. I said we weren't going for now. There's something more important to do tomorrow. Besides, we need to get the courtyard wall fixed right away. That's a big deal too. I have my own ideas. At a critical time like this, someone is definitely paying attention to my family. Especially the Zhou family. It's more reliable to win Wang Jun over first. The next day, when I was heading to the township, Zhou Xin's face was horribly grim. The way he looked at me, it was like he wanted to eat me alive. If there were a few more troublemakers like me in the village, he wouldn't be able to get any work done. When Chen Shuhong was recording my work points, she was deeply worried for me, afraid that Zhou Xin would retaliate against my family later. Not long after I left the village, I ran into Wang Jun driving his donkey cart. He had come specially to wait for me. On the way, Wang Jun asked me, "Are you sure about this?" "How sure?" "More than 70% sure. If you cooperate, 80% will be enough," I said with a determined look on my face. This made Wang Jun's heart burn with excitement. He looked at me, still a bit hesitant. After all, the things I said yesterday were a little hard to believe. When the time comes, just listen to me. You have nothing to lose anyway. I let out a laugh. On the road, Wang Jun and I quickly reached an agreement. Wang Jun was quite familiar with the township government. He asked around about Zhou Yuancheng's case and introduced me to the person handling it. I reported to the staff that the Zhou family hadn't stopped causing trouble even after paying the compensation. Yesterday, they even blocked my father on the road and threatened him. I made my intentions clear. I would absolutely not settle with Zhou Yuancheng. He must be taught a lesson he'll never forget. This case was a bit serious. The township staff quickly gave us an answer. Looked like Zhou Yuancheng would be sent to the county for trial this time. And Wang Jun said he was familiar with this kind of thing. He would take care of it and told me to just wait for news. Sure enough, the day after I returned to the village, news started to spread. Zhou Yuancheng had been sent to the county. They said he was going to be sentenced. Hearing this news, the Zhou family completely panicked. I was watching my father and a few villagers repair the courtyard wall when Zhou Xin arrived. Zhou Cheng was with him. In his hands, Zhou Cheng was holding a woven bamboo basket. Inside was a bag of sugar, a piece of meat, and that new porcelain jar I had brought home earlier. This gift could be considered especially valuable, but I didn't even glance at it. Just said I was busy and didn't even let them in the door. Zhou Xin's face immediately darkened. In his heart, he cursed my family for being so ungrateful and shameless. Zhou Cheng, on the other hand, was quite tactful. He said that their Yuancheng was young and hot-headed. The money had been paid, and he hoped our family could go to the township and withdraw the complaint. And say a few good words. Hearing these placating words, Luo Wanshan felt half his anger disappear. He was just about to invite them inside to sit down, but I stopped him. Zhou Cheng's eyes fell on my family's new enamel pot, and he looked a little surprised. But he didn't say anything, just looked around the room. Zhou Xin sat fuming in his chair, his usual arrogant demeanor gone. His expression only softened after a sip of sugared water. He noticed that in my family, even the children drank sugared water. His heart sank, sensing that this discussion was not going to go smoothly. The Luo family was much wealthier than he had imagined. Sure enough, just as Zhou Xin was trying to get our family to back down, I let out a cold snort. If you Zhou family were truly sincere, you wouldn't have blocked my father on the road and cursed him 2 days ago. This is non-negotiable. Zhou Yuancheng has to go to jail. As soon as the words left my mouth, Zhou Xin couldn't hold back any longer, saying I was just a kid who didn't know what he was talking about. Seeing Zhou Xin lose his temper made me angry too. Zhou Xin, how much longer do you think you can be the village chief? Do you really think this village belongs to your family? As soon as I said that, the color drained from Zhou Xin's face. Luo Wanshan was also startled. He never expected that I would dare to talk back to the village chief. Seeing the situation going south, Zhou Cheng pulled Zhou Xin away. As they were leaving, I even stuffed their gifts back into their hands. You had your chance, but you blew it. Just you wait. Zhou Shin's voice was very loud. The helpers outside heard everything. Everyone started trying to talk some sense into us. Offending the village chief will only bring you trouble. After all, the Zhou family calls the shots in this village. Mom, don't worry. Just focus on making a good dinner. Don't give the villagers anything to gossip about. There are standards when it comes to feeding the helpers. The white rice can't be mixed with other grains, and the dishes have to be rich and oily. Otherwise, our reputation will be ruined. Li Shu Feng prepared 6 dishes. Stir-fried eggs with chili peppers, pork stewed with radish, and a pot of tofu and catfish. When the food was brought to the table, the helpers' mouths started watering. Your family is so generous. How can you still have fish at a time like this? Yang Shang, a quick worker, was very surprised to see such a big fish. Following the story we had agreed on, Li Shu Feng said she had bought it in the county town and had been raising it. No one doubted it. After the meal, Lu Cheng's son, Lu Er, came over with a request. He wanted to invite Li Shu Feng to help cook a meal in a few days for his family's wedding celebration. Li Shu Feng immediately agreed. After several days of hard work from everyone, our family's courtyard wall was finished. It was a full 2 meters high. Luo Wan Shun got a lot of cacti from Uncle Wang's house and planted them on top of the wall. That way, no one would dare to climb over it. I immediately felt a sense of security. But Zhou Shin wasn't happy about it. He was constantly trying to think of ways to make my life difficult. It hadn't rained for days, and the village wells had all dried up. At the village meeting, Zhou Shin announced that he was assigning me the most dangerous job. Using dynamite to blast rocks in the mountain stream to get water. One wrong move and you could die. It was obvious that Zhou Shin was trying to get revenge. If you refuse, you can forget about your work points and grain for the year. Zhou Shin threatened with a cold expression. I calmly stood up and made a suggestion. Since there's water in the mountain stream, it means there's plenty of groundwater. Why don't we just dig a well in the village? It's much safer than blasting the mountain. Wang Jun was the first to stand up and support me. Chen Shuhong also chimed in, and even the party secretary, Zhou Jia, nodded and said I could give it a try. Zhou Shin had no choice. He gave me half a month, saying that if we couldn't find water, we'd have to blast the mountain. For the next few days, I took my father and Wang Jun and wandered around the village. I intentionally chose an abandoned well not far from home, planning to dig deeper. To prevent Zhou Shin from causing any trouble, whenever I went down into the well, my dad had to be the one on guard up top. We dug for a day or two straight. The bottom of the well was still bone dry. Many of the villagers started making sarcastic remarks, saying that if digging the well was going to work, we would have struck water long ago. I paid them no mind. When it was my turn to go down the well, I dug downwards with all my might. Suddenly, I dug up a few red stones. I was very familiar with this color. I had seen this type of soil layer when digging for the underground river. Dad, hurry down and switch with me. There are red stones down here. I shouted excitedly. After Luo Wenshin heard this, his spirits soared. The two of us, father and son, took turns digging for the entire day. As evening approached, Luo Wenshin's joyful shout suddenly came from the bottom of the well. There's water. We've hit water. That one shout sent the crowd of villagers into an uproar. Everyone rushed towards the well like they were crazy. Luo Wenshin was surrounded by the crowd and was helped up like a hero. Some offered him water, others fanned him. He had never been so celebrated before. I stood to the side, watching with a smile. This time, Zhou Shin's plan had completely failed. The entire village held torches and stood guard until midnight. Water had already risen to over a meter deep. This was life-saving water. Wang Jun was ecstatic. He insisted on treating my father and me to drinks. For the occasion, I brought over eggs and homemade liquor. The Wang family had slaughtered a rooster. They also stir-fried a plate of cured meat. We had a little drink, and ate the firm chicken meat. Ah, that was the good life. Wang Jun couldn't stop praising how capable I was and quietly asked me what we should do next. He was now in complete awe of me. His mind focused on how to get Zhou Shin out of the village chief's position. Brother Wang Jun, this is nothing. You listen to me. We'll just add a little more fuel to the fire, and the village chief position will be yours, I said to Wang Jun with a smile. Luo Wanshin, who was eating nearby, was stunned. He could sense that my nerve was getting bolder and bolder. Zhou Shin had been the village chief for many years. In the area around Zhou village, his word was practically an imperial edict. Who would have thought he'd be pushed into such a corner by a junior? Now that the village well had water, my dad, Luo Wanshin, and Wang Jun had become heroes, while Zhou Shin's prestige hit rock bottom. In the Wang family's courtyard, Wang Jun was drinking with my dad. On the table was a plate of salted duck eggs and a bowl of fried peanuts. Old man Wang was also nearby, chiming in that with this well, life in Zhou village would be much better from now on. I hear they have those water pipes in the city. You just turn a switch and the water comes right out. I wonder if I'll ever live to see such a sight. Old man Wang remarked with emotion. Luo Wenshin chimed in as well. Going to the county town is great. They sell everything there, though many things I've never seen in my life. In reality, what he was thinking about was that he could sell fish in the county town to make money. That business was much better than toiling in the village fields. We kept drinking until after 7 o'clock in the evening. When we left, Wang Jun personally walked us a long way. On the way back, Luo Wenshin kept muttering to himself uneasily. Zheng Sheng, what are you and Wang Jun scheming about? The look in his eyes seems a bit off. We're discussing how to take down Zhou Shin, I said, lowering my voice. That guy's no good. If he becomes the village chief, the villagers are bound to suffer sooner or later. I think Wang Jun would be a good fit. It's the perfect time to support him for the position. Luo Wenshin jumped in fright. You can't just say things like that. Besides, do you really think you can do it? Whether I can or not, Dad, you'll just have to wait and see. Seeing his disbelief, I just laughed it off. Anyway, our courtyard wall is built now. It's safe to talk and do things in the yard. Meanwhile, at Zhou Shin's house, the lights were still on. Zhou Cheng was at his older brother's house, drinking, but the atmosphere was dreadfully tense. Big brother, we can forget about that 400 yuan. But if Yuan Cheng really gets sentenced, our Zhou family will be ruined for life. Zhou Shin sighed. Zhou Cheng was filled with regret. His son, Zhou Yuan Cheng, had been too reckless. He'd been caught red-handed. He urged Zhou Shen, "You have to take care of our family. Use money, use power, whatever it takes. As long as you can get the Luo family to back down and drop the charges with the county. If we want to deal with the Luo family later, there will be plenty of chances." That evening, while everyone was busy discussing the matter of the well, my dad and I borrowed Wang Jun's donkey cart, loaded it with several hundred pounds of catfish and loaches, and headed to the black market. Business was surprisingly good. Even Lin Ruolin, a regular customer, had placed an order in advance. But on my way back after buying grain, as I was passing a dark alley, I suddenly saw a big black dog running with a swaddled baby in its mouth. I rushed forward to chase the dog away. I rescued an infant whose face was purple from the cold. It was Lin Ruolin who helped me get the baby to the hospital. The doctor said the baby girl was very lucky. Another half an hour and she would have frozen to death. I felt sorry for the child, and thinking that our family was more financially stable now, decided to bring her back to the village to raise her. The day I brought Lele back to the village, our neighbor, old Mrs. Yang, heard the news and came snooping into our yard. She immediately spotted the baby in my arms. "Zheng Sheng, where did you pick up this little bastard? How dare you bring a child with no proper background into the house?" Old Mrs. Yang's raspy voice echoed through the yard. Before my mother, Li Shufang, had a chance to explain, old Mrs. Yang, pulling rank because of her age, pulled back Lily's blanket, trying to get a good look at her. Just then, Lele kicked her legs, and the purplish red, palm-shaped birthmark on her waist was exposed. The flesh on old Mrs. Yang's face trembled violently. She looked as if she had seen a ghost, pointing at the birthmark and shivering. That handprint, that palm-shaped mark, oh, my heavens, I was stunned too. "Auntie Yang, what's wrong?" Old Mrs. Yang stumbled back 3 steps, and plopped down on the ground, muttering frantically to herself, "This is retribution." 20 years ago, when Zhou Shin's first wife died, she had the exact same handprint on her body. They said it was a cursed mark, pressed there by the hand of that old devil from the Zhou family himself. This child must be a Zhou. My heart skipped a beat. Looking at Lele in my arms, I remembered that absurd, long-buried village secret from my past life. I reached out and touched the small of Lily's back. The baby's skin was very soft, but on her lower back, there was a dark purplish birthmark about the size of a fingernail. The mark had a strange shape. On closer inspection, it looked just like a tiny handprint. The village elders always used to say, a child reincarnated with a mark like that must have been wronged in their past life. They say they were slapped down into the mortal world by the judge of the underworld. I don't know if that rumor is true or false. I just felt the child was fated for a hard life. The news that I brought Lila home soon spread throughout the village. A lot of people with nothing better to do all ran to my house to see the commotion. I didn't try to hide anything, either. I openly told everyone I'd picked her up from the mouth of a big black dog. I also put the word out that if any family knew who this child's parents were, please pass along a message. But the words were barely out of my mouth when a sour voice piped up from outside. Did your Zhengsheng get his brains knocked silly? Why would he bring home such a worthless money pit? I'm telling you, that child is probably some family's shameful secret. Which is why she was thrown into the wasteland to be fed to dogs. The person talking was old Mrs. Yang from next door. She was leaning against the base of the wall, her beady little eyes full of contempt. When my mother, Li Shufang, heard this, the smile on her face immediately froze. She hugged Lila even tighter. "Mrs. Yang, how is it that not one single decent word can come out of that mouth of yours? If not for these money pits you speak of, did your own children and grandchildren just pop out from a crack in a rock? Adding another person to our family is a happy occasion. We don't need you worrying about it." My mom is usually very good-tempered, but she absolutely cannot stand that whole attitude of favoring boys over girls. She treasures her own 2 daughters like the apple of her eye. So now, seeing old Mrs. Yang describe the little life we just saved as completely worthless, she naturally wasn't going to show her any respect. Old Mrs. Yang's face flushed red with anger. She slammed her walking stick on the ground, and her voice rose several notches. "I wasn't lying. Look at your family. Your son is a delinquent, running off somewhere every other day, and your husband is such a simple-minded pushover. Your own family can barely put food on the table, yet you take in another burden. When she gets married in the future, you'll have to pay a dowry. If that's not a money pit, what is?" Old Mrs. Yang had been stewing in anger for a while. Her daughter-in-law, Chen Shuhong, had just been made the work point recorder. She'd been busy with work and balancing the books. She had no time to be at home and take her abuse, and no one to argue with. The moment she saw my mom getting serious, she had no time to be at home and take her abuse, and no one to argue with. The moment she saw my mom getting serious, her desire to argue was immediately ignited. But I'm no pushover, either. I strode right out of the house and said in a cold voice, "Grandma Yang, whether we can afford to raise her or not, we're eating our own grain and drinking water from our own well. We haven't been sneaking into your kitchen to steal your food. If you're really that bored, go on home and count how many sweet potatoes you have left. Stop being such a nuisance here." Old Mrs. Yang was so choked up by my retort, she pointed at my nose, about to start cursing, just as her son, Yang Shang, came home from work. Yang Shang was a sensible man. Seeing his own mother causing trouble again, he quickly ran over and, without a word, started pulling her back home. Chen Shuhong also followed with an embarrassed look on her face, apologizing to our Luo family over and over. Chen Shuhong was a good person. She was a former, educated youth, so she was literate and reasonable. She walked over to my mom's side, and looked at Lila in the swaddling clothes, her eyes filled with a gentle warmth. "Auntie, you know my mother-in-law's temper. Please don't take it to heart. As it happens, I have plenty of milk these days. If you all get too busy, or if Lila has nothing to eat, please feel free to bring her over to my place. I can help nurse her a bit. Thank you, Weiwa." Li Shufang held Chen Shuhong's hand inside. "When you have a moment, you should try to talk to Yang Shang. Your mother-in-law loves to stir up trouble. You two need to be on the same page. Don't let that old woman tear your family apart. Chen Shuhong lowered her head, looking a little dejected. I know all of this. I've been thinking about splitting the household. But Yang Sheng feels his younger brother hasn't married yet, and he wants to help him out for a few more years. He's a filial son, but it's just so hard on me and our child. Li Shufang gave Chen Shuhong some advice. You two should talk it over more when you're in bed. Yang Sheng is a good young man. He'll understand your side of things. After seeing Chen Shuhong off, the sky had turned completely dark. Under the cover of night, I slipped over to Wang Jun's house. At that moment, Wang Jun had just finished dinner. He was sitting in the courtyard smoking his pipe when he saw me. His expression immediately turned serious. I remember in my past life, there were rumors in the village that Zhou Xin and his niece-in-law, Li Shaohua, were involved in something improper. Since that child has the same birthmark on his waist, keeping a close watch on Li Shaohua must be the right move. He went into the inner room, and I took a slip of paper from my coat. On it was written a name, Li Shaohua. I handed the paper to Wang Jun. I said in a low voice, "Third brother, I'll need you to watch this woman for the next few days. Focus on who goes to her house in the middle of the night. If you find anything, tell me immediately. If this works out, your position as militia platoon leader might just get a promotion." Wang Jun looked at the name, and his pupils suddenly contracted. He looked at me in disbelief. "Zheng Sheng, are you sure? This Li Shaohua is the Zhou family's niece-in-law, Zhou Yuancheng's own sister-in-law. Her husband is still away building canals. You want me to spy on her? If word of this gets out, we're aiming for bigger things. We can't worry about the small details," I sneered. "This time, the Zhou family wants us to suffer in silence, so we have to dig up their rotten roots. Just tell me, are you in or not?" Wang Jun gritted his teeth. He slapped his thigh hard. "Fine, I'll trust you this time." While Wang Jun and I were plotting, on the other side, the Zhou brothers were also on pins and needles. Zhou Cheng and Zhou Xin had already discussed it twice in the last 2 days, even raising the compensation to 400 yuan. But I hadn't budged, which made Zhou Xin, the village chief, feel like he was losing face. "Brother, what if we play hardball?" Zhou Xin took a harsh drag from his cigarette. A fierce glint flashed in his eyes. "Those kids from the Luo family. Just grab one of them to scare them. I bet Luo Wanshan will give in then. And we can go out and play the good guys, and this whole thing will be settled." "You're a fool," Zhou Cheng immediately shot back. "The whole village is watching the Luo family's well right now. Wang Jun has been getting close to them, too. If you use force at a time like this, aren't you just handing that Luo fellow leverage? Let's wait, I'll go talk to them again tomorrow. If it really doesn't work, we'll just give them more money." Zhou Xin was fuming. When he came out of his brother's house, it was pitch black outside. He had originally planned to go back to his own house, but after a few steps, he couldn't suppress the frustration and wicked thoughts in his heart, so he turned around. He headed towards a secluded row of single-story houses at the back of the village. He stopped in front of a rickety wooden door. I gently knocked 3 times at Shaohua's. The light in her room quickly came on. Although it was turned down very low, it was particularly glaring in the dark night. Li Shaohua pulled the door open a crack. Seeing it was Zhou Xin, sickeningly sweet smile immediately appeared on her face. She quickly pulled him inside. Then the kerosene lamp in the room went out. Hiding behind a haystack not far away, Wang Jun was so shocked he almost bit his tongue off. He rubbed his eyes, thinking to himself, that kid Zheng Sheng is really something else. This Zhou Xin usually looks so prim and proper, but behind everyone's back, he's actually messing around with his own nephew's wife. Wang Jun held his breath and continued to watch. About an hour or so passed, when suddenly, the faint sound of a baby crying came from inside the room. Wang Jun was stunned. Didn't Li Shaohua already send her eldest back to her parents' home? He quietly crept a few steps forward, pressing himself against the wall beneath the window. He could only hear Zhou Xin's impatient voice from inside. "Why isn't this bastard dead yet? Didn't I tell you to throw it far away? But that's my own flesh and blood. How could I bear to actually kill him?" Li Shaohua sobbed in a hushed voice. I wrapped him up well and left him in the place where the big black dog roams. I thought that would be his fate, but he knew he'd be saved by that doomed Luo Zheng. "Damn it," Zhou Xin growled in a low, suppressed voice. "The birthmark on this child's waist is just like mine, his old man's. It's identical. If anyone sees it, we'll both be facing a firing squad. There's a big meeting tomorrow. You find a way to go to the Luo family's house and get rid of this troublemaker." Outside the window, Wang Jun felt a chill run down his spine. He thought to himself, this Zhou Xin is a real piece of work. He's even willing to kill his own son. He saw that Zhou Xin was about to leave, so he quickly ducked down and retreated into the shadows. After Zhou Xin had gone far away, Wang Jun ran to my house without stopping and insisted on dragging me out of my warm bed. After hearing what Wang Jun said, I had a clear picture of the situation. So that birthmark on Lily's waist was inherited from Zhou Xin. I patted Wang Jun's shoulder and said in a deep voice, "Third brother, the evidence is conclusive. At the all-village meeting tomorrow, we not only have to save this child, we also have to strip Zhou Xin of his hide. As for what comes next, you'll follow my plan." After seeing Wang Jun off, I went back to the inner room. Lele was still sound asleep. I looked at his small, not yet defined face and gently changed him into a clean diaper. From now on, this child's surname will be Luo. As for Zhou Xin, his good days as the village chief are over. Meanwhile, in the county town, Lin Ruolin was also dealing with troubles. Her family had introduced her to Zheng Tai, the factory director's son. Relying on his family's wealth, that man buzzed around Lin Ruolin every day like a fly, bragging about how many scarce industrial coupons he could get. Lin Ruolin frowned and said, "If you don't have anything else, you should head back. I still have reports to check." After speaking, she turned around directly without waiting for him to respond. Just as the sky was faintly brightening, the Zhou family village brigade headquarters crewed. Loudspeaker crackled to life. Zhou Xin's voice, in its usual pretentious tone, could be heard from half a village away. "Attention, all commune members. This morning at 8 o'clock, everyone is to gather at the brigade headquarters field for a meeting. Not a single household is excused. Anyone who doesn't come will have their entire year's work points deducted. I was changing Lily's diaper. The little guy slept so soundly last night. His little face was all rosy, and when he saw me teasing him, he would wave his little fists and giggle. Li Shufang came in, carrying a bowl of freshly prepared rice porridge. When she saw this, she couldn't stop smiling. The moment I heard the loudspeaker, my brow instantly furrowed. Zheng Sheng, I'm afraid Zhou Xin is up to no good. This meeting is definitely targeting you. She placed the bowl on the edge of the bed and gently stroked Lily's little cheek. Wang Jun brought a message yesterday. He said that last night, Zhou Xin went to find Zhou Cheng and the rest of the Zhou family guys. They were shut in, whispering for half the night. There's no telling what nasty plan they're hatching. I finished wrapping Lila up and handed him to my mom, a cold smirk forming on my lips. I could see right through Zhou Xin's little scheme. He knows I have something on him and Li Shalwa, rather than wait for me to expose the matter. He figures it's better to strike first, using Lila as an excuse. First, he'll ruin my reputation. If he can, he'll try to frame me for kidnapping, or as a degenerate, and have me sent straight to the detention center. That way, he can silence me and hold onto his position as village chief. Mom, what's there to panic about? I wiped my hands, picked up the water jug on the table, and took a big gulp of cold water. If he wants to set a trap, we'll just turn his own plan against him. He wants to shame me in front of the whole village, right? Well, I'll make him, in front of the whole village, expose his own true colors. Just as I was speaking, we heard footsteps outside the courtyard gate. Wang Jun pushed the door open and came in, bringing the morning chill with him. He was clutching a cloth-wrapped package, and his expression was grim. Zheng Sheng, it's all been arranged. He placed the cloth bundle on the table. Inside was a brand new army canteen, along with a testimony he'd written up overnight. He even put his thumbprint on it. Last night, after Zhou Xin left Li Shalwa's place, he went to Zhou Cheng's house. The two of them have it all planned out. At the meeting today, they'll have Li Shalwa come out crying first, saying you stole her child. She'll also slander you, accusing you of making improper advances. Then Zhou Xin will lead the Zhou brothers to stir up the crowd. They'll tie you up and send you directly to the commune. Zhou Cheng also said, as long as they can get you locked up, his family is willing to pay 200 yuan to make it happen. Luo Wanshin, who had just come in from chopping firewood in the courtyard, heard this. The axe in his hand clattered to the floor, his face pale with rage. Those goddamn animals, they ruined our whole family in the past, and now they're trying to play dirty again. I'll grab a hoe and kill them today. Dad, don't be impulsive. I grabbed a hold of him. Fighting them head on will only make us fall into their trap. In this situation today, we don't need to lift a finger. We only need to use our words, and we can make sure the Zhou family never recovers. I leaned in close to their ears, and carefully explained the plan I had already thought out. The more Wang Jun listened, the brighter his eyes became, until he finally slapped his thigh hard. Zheng Sheng, I've got to hand it to you, you've got a sharp mind. Today, I'm dying to see how Zhou Xin, that old bastard, is going to get himself out of this. At 8 o'clock sharp, the brigade headquarters field was already swarming with people. During this major drought, the villagers didn't have much work to do anyway. So when they heard there was a spectacle to watch, even quite a few people from the neighboring village came rushing over. On a dirt platform in the middle of the playground, Zhou Xin was wearing a faded cadre uniform. He stood there with his hands behind his back, a look of stern righteousness on his face. Zhou Cheng had brought a dozen or so strong laborers from the Zhou family, surrounding both sides of the platform. Every one of them was scowling fiercely, like temple guardians. You could tell they were up to no good. I held Lele in my arms, and walked over unhurriedly with my parents. Wang Jun and a few of his brothers from the militia company followed behind us, keeping a short distance. Grandpa Wang, leaning on his cane and supported by someone, also sat down in a chair at the very front of the platform. That was the seat for the most respected person in the village. No matter how arrogant Zhou Xin was, he wouldn't dare act out of line in front of him. Seeing me arrive, a flash of cruelty crossed Zhou Xin's eyes. He then picked up a megaphone and cleared his throat. He shouted loudly, "Fellow villagers, we're holding this meeting today to deal with a disgraceful matter in our village. Our Zhoujia village has always been a place where people live honestly. But unfortunately, a black sheep has appeared among us." He pointed a finger at me. His voice suddenly rose. "Luo Zheng, a few days ago, you brought back a baby girl of unknown origin. Everyone in the village thought you were being kind, but who would have known that you actually abducted this child? Not only that, you also had indecent intentions toward a woman from our own village. You even dared to act like a hooligan with one of the Zhou family. Today, on behalf of the commune, and on behalf of all the villagers, I'm going to properly interrogate you, you bastard." As soon as he said this, the crowd below the platform erupted. Old Lady Yang squeezed to the front, and immediately started stirring things up. I knew there was something shady about that child. So she was abducted after all. That Luo Zheng kid, he looks decent enough, but behind everyone's back, he does such wicked things. The members of the Zhou family immediately chimed in, and a chorus of curses erupted. Few young men from the Zhou family even rolled up their sleeves, ready to rush up and grab me. "All of you, stop right there," I shouted coldly. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried an intimidating aura. The young men actually froze in their tracks. I held Lele, and walked up onto the platform step by step, my gaze coldly sweeping over Zhou Xin. "Village Chief Zhou, you can't just make baseless accusations. You say I abducted a child, and that I acted indecently. Where's your proof? You want to frame me with just empty words? Is this how you act as a village chief? Proof? Of course I have proof." Zhou Xin sneered and shouted to the crowd below. "Shalwa, you come up here. In front of the entire village, tell everyone what this animal did to you. Say everything. Don't be afraid, the village will stand up for you." The crowd parted, and Li Shalwa came forward with her head down, sobbing as she walked up. She was wearing old, patched clothes. Her hair was a mess, and her eyes were red and swollen, looking as if she had suffered a terrible injustice. The moment she got on the platform, she pointed at me, and shrieked through her tears. It was him, Luo Zheng, a few days ago, when I was going back to my parents' house. He stopped me on the road, He put his hands on me, and even snatched my newborn daughter away. My daughter has a palm-sized birthmark on her waist. The baby he brought back is mine. Below the stage, the crowd erupted in an uproar once again. The way he looked at me changed in an instant. Zhou Shin stared at me smugly, as if victory was already in his grasp. Luo Zheng, what else do you have to say for yourself? The witness and the evidence are all here. Are you still trying to deny it? I looked at Li Shalwa and suddenly smiled. I slowly lifted Lily's blanket, revealing the clear, palm-sized birthmark on the child's lower back. Then I looked at Li Shalwa, my voice calm yet carrying immense weight. Li Shalwa, you say this child is yours. Then let me ask you something. What time of day was he born? And how much did he weigh at birth? Is there a vaccination mark on his left arm? When he nurses, does he prefer the left side or the right? This barrage of questions left Li Shalwa completely stunned. She just stood there, her face as white as a sheet. Her lips trembled, and for the longest time, she couldn't utter a single word. She had barely taken care of the child for a few days. How could she possibly know these details? Can't answer? I sneered. My gaze shifted to Zhou Shin. Then why don't we let village chief Zhou answer for her? After all, this child's real father is none other than you, Zhou Shin. Our great village chief Zhou, huh? That sentence was like a clap of thunder. It exploded right there on the grounds. The entire crowd fell deathly silent. You could even hear people breathing. Every single pair of eyes was fixed on Zhou Shin's face. His face instantly went from red to white, and then from white to ashen. He pointed at me, trembling all over. You're talking nonsense. You're slandering me. I'll tear your mouth off. Am I talking nonsense? I shouted to the crowd below. Wang Jun, tell them what you saw and heard last night. In front of all the villagers, young and old, tell them everything, word for word. Wang Jun strode onto the stage, holding the testimony with the thumbprint. He began to read it aloud. From Zhou Shin knocking on Li Shalwa's door in the middle of the night. Their conversation inside the house. From Zhou Shin telling Li Shalwa to get rid of the baby. To the two of them plotting to falsely accuse me at today's meeting. Every single word was crystal clear. Down below, people's eyes grew wider and wider, their mouths hanging open in disbelief. No one could have imagined that their usually respectable village chief was actually involved with his own nephew's wife. That they'd had a child, and that to cover up the scandal. He was willing to kill his own flesh and blood with his own hands. You're full of it, Wang Jun. You're slandering an official. I'm going to report you to the commune. Zhou Shin roared hysterically and was about to charge forward to snatch the testimony from Wang Jun's hands. But just as he took a step, Elder Wang slammed his cane down hard on the ground. The thud was so loud it made the stage tremble. The old man stood up, his gaze as sharp as a knife. He stared daggers at Zhou Shin. Zhou Shin, you stop right there. Wang Jun is the militia leader. Do you think his testimony is fake? Last night, I had 2 militiamen follow him. What the two of you said in that house. They heard it all from outside. What else do you have to say for yourself? Zhou Shin froze instantly, all the color draining from his face. Just then, Li Shalwa suddenly dropped to her knees with a thud. She kowtowed to the crowd again and again, crying her heart out. I confess, I'll confess everything. This child is mine and Zhou Shin's. He forced me. He said if I didn't do what he said, he would kill me and the child. A few days ago, he told me to throw the child to the dogs. I couldn't bear to, but I didn't dare disobey him. He also said that if I could get Luo Zheng locked up today, he'd give me 50 yuan. He told me to take the child and run far away. As she cried, she pulled out a crumpled diary from her clothes and held it above her head. Everything in here is what she wrote to me, along with the work points she skimmed from the village over the years. And the records of her seizure of collective property, it's all in here. This was a complete bombshell. Zhou Shin looked at the diary. His legs went weak, and he collapsed right there on the stage. He knew it was all over for him. The crowd below erupted, the sound of curses thundering. Villagers had long had enough of Zhou Shin's favoritism and skimming. Now that the truth was out, old grudges and new hatreds were settled all at once. Eggs, rotten vegetables, and dirt clods rained down on the stage, all of it hitting Zhou Shin. That animal, he wouldn't even spare his own nephew's wife. Strip him of his village chief title. Send him to the police station. Make him give back the money he stole all these years. Give it all back to us. Just then, 2 jeeps from the commune drove into the village, stopping right at the brigade office entrance. I had already sent Wang Jun to the commune yesterday to report everything, telling them about Zhou Shin and Li Shalwa. And about how he had been stealing collective property. I exposed it all. The commune secretary had already gotten wind of it and made a special trip here with his people today. He walked right into the middle of it. A cadre from the commune walked onto the stage, and without even looking at Zhou Shin, who was tan on the ground, he picked up the megaphone. He announced loudly, after discussion and decision by the commune party committee. Effective immediately, Zhou Shin is suspended from his duties as the chief of Joujia village. Regarding his moral conduct issues, and his economic crimes, a case will be opened for investigation. The relevant individuals are to be taken back to the commune for questioning immediately. 2 police officers stepped forward and slapped handcuffs directly on Zhou Shin. Zhou Shin's face was ashen as he was dragged away. As he passed by me, he suddenly lifted his head, his eyes filled with venomous hatred. Luo Zheng, I won't let you get away with this. I held Lele and looked at him coldly. Zhou Shin, you should probably first worry about whether you can survive those years in the labor camp. What you owed me in our past life, I've collected it all back in this one, with interest. Zhou Shin was taken away, and Li Shalwa was also taken in for her statement. The members of the Zhou family all hung their heads in despair, amidst the jeers and curses of the entire village. They scurried home with their tails between their legs. This grand meeting ended with Zhou Shin's complete downfall, and I, Luo Zheng, became a figure admired by everyone in Joujia village. As I walked home carrying Lele, sunlight fell on me, warm and comforting. Li Shufang took Lele, grinning from ear to ear. Little brother, you're really something else. Now the Zhou family won't dare to bully us anymore. Luo Wenshin also stood up straighter. All along the way, villagers kept greeting him, calling him Uncle Wenshin. He had never been so respected in his entire life. But I knew in my heart, this was just the beginning. The Zhou family had been entrenched in this village for so many years.